Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
This week, two retiring lawmakers talk about their contributions and experiences serving in the legislature, and the governor and leaders announce a budget framework as lawmakers hurtle to the legislative finish line. Stay tuned for this and more on this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Loehrke. Nearly 1/3 of the Senate has decided to retire, marking an end to some long and accomplished legislative careers. We're planning an occasional series over the next few months to talk with some retiring senators about their accomplishments and experiences. This week, we begin with Senator Patricia Torres Ray. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, Shannon.
You are the first Latina to serve in the Minnesota Senate following your election in 2006. And in 2010, you were the first woman of color to run as lieutenant governor in Minnesota. Do you view yourself as a trailblazer, and is it gratifying to see increases in diverse representation in many areas across the state?
I have been defined as a trailblazer by many groups, and I am very honored to receive that title. It's very gratifying, and you don't run to be the first off. You just run because you're passionate and because you're being asked to join a race. And then along the way, you find all of these people who say, I was so inspired by your speech. I was so inspired by the work that you did. I'm inspired by your presence here at the Capitol. And I decided to run. I decided to do this. I decided to take this step. So it's very gratifying, and it's wonderful to find that, in groups that you don't expect it. Sometimes you go to a church, you go to a gathering, and you find people who will tell you, I listened to you when you were presenting this bill in the floor, and I was so inspired, and I called somebody, and I'm running now for this position for the school board. So it's very gratifying. I love it, and I would love to continue to do that.
You chaired the education policy in 2013 and 14, and you've spearheaded a number of initiatives to improve educational outcomes, including aids for students learning English, and also advocating strongly for more Indigenous teachers and teachers of color in the classrooms. As the state moves forward, what do you believe are the most pressing needs for kids in the classroom?
We need to address the education gap. And that has really been my passion and the reason for why I served in the committee from the very beginning and really focused my work on those populations. We have a great challenge in Minnesota, but we also have a state that value education, that really want to put resources in education. And I think that we need to do more in terms of accountability. And people will say, how do you say that instead of just, funding education and providing the resources? I want to do both. I think there is an issue of accountability to families, parents, and particularly our students. We need to do more to inspire students, to stay, graduate, pursue higher education. We need to reinvent education. We need to hire people that reflect the student population. We have to do many things, and we know what those things are. That's what is most exciting about it. When you don't know, it's very difficult. What do we do? And people often say, what do we do, Senator Torres Ray? We have this achievement gap. What do we do? Well, we invest in these children. We inspire these children. We work with their families. We want to make sure that they have a stability in their lives, that they have a good home near their house, that they have a clinic, that they are healthy. All of those things can be done. Minnesota has the resources to do that. We just have chosen to ignore it far too long. Since I came to this country, I've been talking about these statistics and continue to talk about the disparities that exist in this state, and we have to end them. So, I have tried the LEAPS Act, which was really when Carlos Mariani and I were chairing the Education Committee when we did this work together. So it was just really the moment, the House and the Senate, let's do policy reviews in depth and try to change the practice of education. And that has been really a piece of policy that has been reviewed nationally. And a lot of foundations are paying states to say, okay, look at Minnesota and what they are doing. So I'm very proud of that.
Your district was impacted in the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd. You spoke passionately on the Senate floor on behalf of your constituents for aid to rebuild. How is your district doing?
My district is doing okay in some ways. I still feel very passionate and very touched by that really conversation. It has been really one of the most important conversations, the most important issues that my district confronted. And I'm still not over it, of course. You know, I have many friends who don't have the restaurants. We have many businesses who have not been able to rebuild. We have vacant lots in key corners of my district, and I just can't, just driving by is very painful for me. Have we done enough? No. Actually, we've done almost nothing in the state of Minnesota, in the legislature, to help my district. And that has been really the most frustrating part of my career here, to endure the treatment that I have endured and that my community has endured. The criticism of my city, the criticism of the community that welcomed me to this country 35 years ago, the criticism of a community that really created an environment for businesses to thrive in a corridor that was dying, that nobody wanted to work with or be in, and not have the legislature, the Senate, accepting that this is really an important part of what we needed to do, that we needed to invest in that energy and to rebuild those businesses that have given so much to our community. It's been very hard, very, very hard. And I continue to try to be a voice. We try to work with foundations, with the Lake Street Council, to bring those voices to the legislature, to see if we can move some of our members to really look at the importance of investing in that area. But it has not been easy.
So you are currently the ranking minority member of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. Environmental concerns are very important to you. You're also on the Energy and Utilities Committee. And from a DFL perspective, there is an intersection of environment and energy as, states, nations are moving to more renewable energy. Are you hopeful for the future in those two regards?
I am hopeful when I meet with the private sector and I hear what companies and what I hear the young people engage in this conversation and what people outside of the Senate are asking us to do. I am very excited about it. I think that conversation is deeper today, the understanding this is an existential threat that we need to address. All of the issues to protect our environment, to protect our planet, to protect water, to protect our own existence is real. And young people understand it. We have more knowledge about it, but we're not acting on it. And that is the frustration here. Of all the committees, being in the Energy Committee and the Environment Committee has been the most frustrating for me because the action is not there. It doesn't reflect the urgency that we hear. It doesn't reflect our understanding of how science really needs to drive, what we do here in policy. There is a complete disconnect.
Finally, as you prepare to leave the Senate, what accomplishments are you most proud of and what will you miss?
I am very proud of the opportunity that I have received and I have provided to the community to be here. I believe very strongly that we cannot do policy without people. And I live that every day. Young people chant, no decisions about us without us. I believe in that. And so I have tried very hard with my caucus, in the Senate, everywhere to say, no, we are going to bring people to really drive the conversation about the policy that we're designing for them. I'm most proud of that. For me, that's a very important task of the work that we do as policymakers.
Senator Patricia Torres Ray, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
Governor Tim Walz and legislative leaders reached an agreement on how to allocate the state's $9.2 billion surplus over the current biennium and the next one. The framework includes $4 billion in tax relief, $1 billion for health and human services, $1 billion for E-12 education, and $450 million for judiciary and public safety. Other budget targets include $846 million for transportation, which includes provisions that will provide matching funds to capture federal infrastructure dollars, $100 million for housing, $47.3 million for energy, $46 million for higher education, and $15 million for agriculture. In addition, the agreement provides for $50 million for broadband expansion, $60 million for mental health, and $18.4 million for a drought relief package to aid farmers and ranchers who were impacted by last summer's drought. The governor and leaders spoke to the press about their framework agreement.
There's an awful lot of the hard work of democracy yet to be done this week, but the parameters have been set, and they've been done in a way that, again, I think should make Minnesotans proud. It may not look like it from the outside, but there's nobody else in the country dealing with this dynamics in their politics in terms of a divided legislature and then a difference between the governor's office. But in the midst of all that, I have to give a huge amount of thanks and gratitude and lift up the leadership of Senator Miller's work. He approached this negotiating in good faith, with respect, passionately making the case for his constituents and his belief of what's best for Minnesota, as did Speaker Hortman, the exact same way. The good news on that is we may not be arguing and making the passionate plea for the exact same thing, but the belief of both these leaders of what was best for Minnesota was clear, and what came together in a compromise serves a much broader group of constituencies. In a time of historic surpluses, in a time of economic uncertainty, the prudent and I think mature approach to this is to recognize Minnesotans need money back in their pockets right now. It makes sense to do that. The advocacy on some returned money to get back in the pockets, some long-term tax cuts, especially targeting that middle-class folks, was an argument that is a solid one. And then also making sure that we're investing and reducing costs in things like education, making sure we're focusing on public safety, and then allowing the legislature to work some of these issues with the experts that set up in that building. I've said it time and time again, from things like opioid addiction. We have members of the legislature who are nationally recognized for their advocacy in this. We have a world-class transportation system that is going to get better as we use the federal dollars from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. All of those things are win-win-wins.
Since the budget forecast was released showing a massive budget surplus for the state of Minnesota, Republicans were really focused on ideas to put more money back in the pockets of Minnesotans. We wanted to give those surplus dollars back to the people of the state of Minnesota. We are very pleased that this agreement includes permanent, ongoing tax relief, so hardworking Minnesotans have more money in their pockets every single paycheck, week after week, month after month, year after year, especially at a time when Minnesotans are struggling with record rates of inflation. And in addition to putting money back in people's pockets, there are some other critical issues facing our state. Violent crime is absolutely out of control. Kids are falling behind in the classroom. We're hearing from nursing homes and long-term care facilities and disability service providers that they're facing potential permanent closures. So the other thing that this agreement does is it makes targeted investments in areas that will affect people all across the state of Minnesota at a time when they're needed most.
We are looking at a budget agreement today that will help Minnesotans better afford the cost of living, to help them afford childcare and housing. We are looking at a budget agreement that will help Minnesotans recover from two of the toughest years in our state's history. House Democrats from the very beginning have been focused on making sure that all Minnesotans have a safe community where they can thrive and be successful, and the investments contained in this budget agreement will make a big difference in the lives of millions of people. We know it's not enough. We know that we have a continuing need to support families through paid family and medical leave and earned sick and safe time. We know that our frontline workers waited too long for help from the state, but we are committed to continuing in this work We know that in our 4th year of divided government, we can continue to make progress if we are persistent and understand that we cannot give up on our core values as Democrats, and we are not doing that. In fact, we are setting the stage for continued investment in the years ahead by limiting the size of tax cuts, focusing on education and health care, and leaving enough money on the bottom line to avoid future deficits.
Senator Chris Eaton was elected to the Senate in a 2011 special election and has played a crucial role in tackling opioid abuse. She recently announced her intention to retire, and I spoke with her this week about some of the key provisions she championed to combat the opioid epidemic. You came to the legislature to do something about opioid abuse, at least in part, because your daughter died tragically of an overdose in 2007. Because of your efforts, first responders now carry naloxone or Narcan, which can reverse an overdose. That 2014 law also exempts someone from prosecution on drug charges if they go for help. These two things would likely have saved your daughter's life. Is it some consolation knowing that future lives may have been saved?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I enjoy the opportunity to reflect a little bit. Yes, I think that we've saved thousands of lives. In fact, I know there were over 90,000 overdoses that were reversed in the last couple of years. But unfortunately, there were also 1,500 opioid deaths. There were only 50 in the state of Minnesota the year my daughter died. So we're not making progress per se. We're saving a lot of lives, but the epidemic continues to take a lot of, so there's like 1,500 families who are going through what I went through. And that doesn't make me feel better, but I'm glad that we're saving lives.
You were also co-sponsor of a bill that became law in 2019, and it was considered groundbreaking at the time. It established a licensing and registration fee on opioid manufacturers and distributors to raise money to address the impacts of opioid abuse. The law also created the Opioid Epidemic Response Advisory Council, which is often just called ORAC, and you have been a member of that council. Is this a good way of determining needs, of raising funds and determining needs and distributing funding to try to turn this tide on opioid abuse?
Well, I think it's a tool. I think it's making a difference in some areas. Unfortunately, the process of having to come up and with a, you have to file for a grant. And writing a grant is not something the average person is very adept at. So a lot of the money is going to the areas that were already being funded by established organizations who can afford a grant writer. So that's my objection to the process. But otherwise, I think a lot more of the funds are going to more local needs. I would like the Department of Human Services, Department of Health, to take a little more of a stronger lead in using the science to find ways, especially now with fentanyl. And I think that we're still treating it like it's overprescribing causing it all. And I don't really think that's the issue anymore.
What do you think is the issue now?
It's the fentanyl, the carfentanil, all the synthetic opioids that are on the market that are being played. I mean, people are punching out like Percocets and oxycodone and whatever in their basements that look identical to the manufactured pills, and they're selling them. And a lot of the people, especially those like we're talking, intractable pain is one of the fallouts from this whole thing. And those people are buying them off the street, and they think they're buying a Percocet or a oxycodone, and what they're getting is a lot of fentanyl, and the amount of fentanyl in them is killing people.
And so to go back just a step, you would like to see more grassroots efforts, more local efforts to get some of this funding in order to do more to try at the ground level, really, to try to reverse this trend?
Yes, especially like in the Somali community, the young people there are really trying to fight this, and they're being, devastated by this opioid epidemic. And but their culture won't let them really talk about it with the older adults in the community, and so, but they don't have the wherewithal to write a grant, so they can't get this funding. So it kind of frustrates me that those type of things aren't available, and I would like more outside the traditional treatment. I mean, most of our treatment is focused around how we've always done the alcohol treatment, the 12 steps, which, hey, it works. I'm a person in recovery and it worked for me, but I wasn't using opioids. It's a totally different situation.
Well, speaking of money that is coming in, Governor Walz just signed into law a bill that designates how Minnesota's $300 million portion of a multi-state settlement with some opioid manufacturers and distributors will be dispersed, 75% to cities and counties and 25% to the state. And and you referenced this, the Department of Health Opioid Overdose Dashboard. Overdose deaths and non-fatal overdoses have risen sharply in the last couple years. So how might some of this influx in funding help?
Well, I'm really excited that the outcome was what I was hoping it would be. 75% of that money is going to go into local governments and into local communities where they know what their issues are, boots on the ground, and they can use that money to deal with it in their community instead of us trying to guess from St. Paul. And I'm excited about that. I think that they'll be able to get some of that money out to people who can't write grants and who really need resources. I'm hoping that some of it goes to education. I mean, the kids in the schools need to know that if they're going to buy marijuana or cocaine or whatever on the street, it's probably got fentanyl in it and it could kill them. And that's, those kind of public service announcements need to be done. I've been trying to push ORAC to do a public service campaign, but I don't know if they're gonna. But that's what needs to happen. We need to educate people, so kind of on the scale we did with smoking. I thought that was a really well done campaign, and something like that needs to happen. This is not something you can survive recreational use of.
One other thing that you had a hand in was cracking down on the prescribing of opioids by medical professionals. And we've spoken in the past about how the views of pain treatment have changed over time. I remember that you telling me on this program that, pain is a good thing. It tells us about how our body is doing. And so the complete removal of it is not necessarily a good thing. Because of the prescription monitoring system, are doctors prescribing more effectively now?
I think so, and I think a lot of it has to do with the education and the public awareness of the dangers of taking opioids, where it used to be kind of routine that if you had any kind of pain, that's what you got. And I think they're doing a better job. Some are still overprescribing, of course, and but for the most part, things are calming down. A lot of doctors became very concerned with being monitored and cut off a lot of people, which was very sad. So I think they're getting more comfortable with the monitoring, and I think the prescribing is improved. That was a long process, the opioid prescribing worker.
Yes, it was. Before we go, you are retiring from the Senate, and we've been talking about your contributions to curb the scourge of opioid abuse. And this may be perhaps your biggest legacy, but for you personally, what are you most proud of and what will you miss?
I think besides the opioid work, I'm really proud of the work I did in the environment. I think I helped stop a lot of bad legislation, and it didn't necessarily get a lot of good stuff across the line, but and my protection of the wolf population has been really important to me. But the environment, climate change has been an issue for me long before it was, what do you want to call it, but so my family was always very strong into preserving the natural environment and recycling and all that. So yeah, and what I'm going to miss is probably the people. I've really developed some good friendships on both sides of the aisle. I've worked really closely with Julie Rosen on all my opioid bills, and Representative Dave Baker, and both Republicans, and then of course all my Democrat colleagues that we've worked hard on lots of issues. Human services, I spent 40 years in mental health as a nurse, and not all of it as a nurse, but so fixing some of the mental health laws and requirements was one of my early projects. So I've worked closely with NAMI and Sue Aberholden, and I think we've made some good progress.
Senator Chris Eaton, I want to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
With just days until the end of session, the Senate DFL attempted, unsuccessfully, to bring cannabis legalization to the floor for a vote.
Back in 2019, I authored a bill that would make Minnesota the 19th state in the nation to legalize cannabis. And since I first introduced it with bipartisan support, the bill has received only one hearing in the Minnesota Senate. Over the past 2 years, I've requested hearings multiple times, not only to have them rejected by the majority. The House has passed a bill on a bipartisan level to legalize cannabis, and Governor Walz supports it.
We are here to move forward the will of Minnesotans, and a majority of Minnesotans support legalizing cannabis. We owe it to our constituents, and especially the communities who are most harmed by this prohibition, to at least have that conversation. And with only days left in this session, the need is urgent.
It'd probably be no surprise to you that I'm standing up with regards to the legalization of this very dangerous drug, constantly coming to the legislature. And now I'm hearing it's urgent. It's really urgent that we do this, so we do the cops a favor by legalizing a drug. I can't hardly believe what I'm hearing. We don't have a quantitative way of testing, so when there's a crash out there, if the person's been using marijuana, we can't even test it.
There being 31 ayes and 33 nays, the motion to withdraw and place on general orders does not prevail.
Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Loehrke, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.